My name's Brandon Stevens. I'm a 58-year-old living in Denver, Colorado, and I never thought I'd be writing this story. For the past 30 years, I've worked as a construction foreman, building homes for families across the Front Range. My hands are calloused, my back aches most mornings, but I've always been proud of the life I've built, literally and figuratively. I raised 3 boys as a single father after my wife Sarah passed away from cancer when they were just teenagers. Michael, the oldest at 32, works as an accountant in Phoenix. David, my middle son at 29, teaches high school history right here in Denver. And then there's Tyler, my youngest at 26, who just graduated from law school at the University of Colorado and landed a job at a prestigious firm in Boulder. I thought I'd done everything right. I worked double shifts to pay for their education, never missed a baseball game or parent-teacher conference, and taught them the value of hard work and family loyalty. We spent summers camping in Rocky Mountain National Park, and every Thanksgiving, we'd gather at my modest ranch house in Arvada, where I still live, to watch the Broncos game and share stories. Tyler was always the sensitive one, the dreamer who preferred books to baseball bats. I supported his decision to pursue law even when money was tight. I was so proud when he graduated summa cum laude and passed the bar exam on his first try. 6 months ago, he called to tell me he was engaged to Rebecca, a fellow lawyer from a wealthy family in Aspen. I was thrilled. My youngest boy had found love and success. But something changed after that engagement announcement. Tyler's calls became less frequent, his visits even rarer. When I'd suggest meeting for our usual Sunday breakfast at Sam's Diner on Colfax, he'd make excuses about work or wedding planning. Rebecca seemed nice enough the few times I met her, but there was something in her eyes, a coldness when she looked at my work boots and flannel shirts. Last Tuesday, as I was reviewing blueprints for a new development in Lakewood, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was Tyler, and the subject line made my heart sink. Wedding update. Please read carefully. I set down my coffee mug and opened the message, completely unprepared for what I was about to discover about my own son. The email was formal, almost businesslike, which should have been my first red flag. Tyler had always been articulate, but this felt cold and distant. "Hi, Dad," it began. "I hope you're doing well. Rebecca and I have been discussing the wedding arrangements, and we've decided to keep the ceremony intimate and exclusive." My stomach dropped as I continued reading. Given the venue's limited capacity and the guest list requirements, we're asking immediate family members who aren't in the wedding party to join us via live stream instead. We know you'll understand and support our decision to make this day as stress-free as possible. I read it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something. My youngest son was asking me to skip his wedding and watch it online like some stranger. The venue was the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, a place I'd driven past countless times, but never imagined I'd be uninvited from my own son's wedding there. The worst part was the tone. No "I'm sorry, Dad," or "I wish things were different." Just a clinical explanation, followed by a link to the wedding website where I could RSVP for virtual attendance. I called David immediately. "Did you get an email from Tyler about the wedding?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Yeah, Dad, I'm sorry. Rebecca's family is, well, they have very specific ideas about how things should be. Tyler's been different since he started dating her, more concerned with appearances." "What do you mean, appearances?" David hesitated. "Dad, her family owns half of Aspen. They think working-class people like us don't fit their image. Tyler's caught between wanting to please her and, I don't know, he seems embarrassed by us now." That hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Embarrassed? My son was embarrassed by the man who raised him, who sacrificed everything so he could become a lawyer, who taught him to drive in my old Chevy pickup and helped him with homework at our kitchen table every night for 12 years? I walked out to my garage and stared at the tools that built our life together. In the corner sat Tyler's old bike, the one I'd assembled for his 8th birthday. I'd kept it all these years, thinking maybe someday he'd want it for his own kids. Now I wondered if those grandchildren would even know my name. The next few days were torture. I couldn't focus on work, snapping at my crew for minor mistakes I'd normally laugh off. Every time I looked at my phone, I hoped for a call from Tyler explaining it was all a misunderstanding. Instead, I got a follow-up email with additional wedding details for virtual guests. The email included a dress code for the live stream viewers. Business casual recommended for anyone appearing on camera during virtual toasts. They were treating me like a prop in their perfect wedding production. I was supposed to dress up, sit in my living room, and smile into my laptop camera while my son got married 90 miles away. Saturday morning, I drove to Michael's house in Aurora to watch my grandson Jake's soccer game. Michael took one look at me and knew something was wrong. During halftime, I showed him the emails. His face darkened as he read. "This is Rebecca's doing, isn't it?" he said. "Tyler would never do this on his own." "Does it matter? He chose her over his family." Michael shook his head. "Remember when I was dating that girl in college who didn't want me hanging out with you guys? You told me that anyone who makes you choose between them and your family isn't worth having. Tyler's forgotten that lesson." That afternoon, I decided to visit Tyler unannounced at his apartment in Boulder. I needed to look him in the eye and understand how we'd gotten here. The drive up Highway 36 felt like the longest hour of my life. When Tyler opened the door, he looked genuinely surprised, but not particularly happy to see me. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk about this wedding situation, son." He glanced nervously over his shoulder. "Rebecca's not here. She is at her bridal shower in Vail." He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. My own son didn't even invite me into his home. "Tyler, help me understand this. I raised you, supported your dreams, put you through school. Now you're telling me I'm not good enough to attend your wedding?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw a flash of the old Tyler, the boy who used to defend his brothers on the playground. But then his expression hardened again. "Dad, you don't understand. This isn't about being good enough. It's about fitting in. Rebecca's family has certain expectations. And what about your expectations of your son? What about loyalty?" Tyler looked away, staring at the flat irons in the distance. "I have to think about my future now, Dad. My career, my marriage. Things are complicated." At that moment, I realized I'd lost my youngest boy to people who valued image over integrity. But I also realized something else. I wasn't going down without a fight. Driving back to Denver, my hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. But somewhere between Boulder and Arvada, anger transformed into determination. I'd spent 30 years building things, homes, businesses, relationships. I knew how to construct something solid, and I also knew how to tear down what was built on a weak foundation. That night, I called my brother Jim in Dallas. He's a private investigator who specializes in background checks for law firms. "Jimmy, I need a favor. Can you run a discreet check on a family in Aspen? Last name Morrison. They own some real estate up there." "Brandon, what's going on?" I explained the wedding situation. Jim was quiet for a long moment. "Send me what you know. Give me 48 hours. While waiting for Jim's call, I did some digging of my own. Rebecca's father, Richard Morrison, owned Morrison Development Group. Their website was full of glossy photos showing luxury mountain retreats and exclusive ski lodges. But something nagged at me about their recent projects. I'd been in construction long enough to spot red flags. Wednesday evening, Jim called back. "Brandon, sit down. Richard Morrison is in some serious trouble. The Colorado Department of Revenue has been investigating his company for tax evasion. Apparently, he's been underreporting income on his Aspen properties for years. There's also a class action lawsuit from buyers who claim Morrison Development sold them lots with undisclosed environmental issues." My heart raced. How bad are we talking? Bad enough that his assets might be frozen within the next few months. The guy's leveraged to the hilt, and if this goes south, he could lose everything. That fancy wedding they're planning, it might be one of the last hurrahs before the walls come tumbling down. Suddenly, Rebecca's urgency to marry Tyler made sense. She wasn't just gaining a husband, she was securing a future with someone who had legitimate earning potential before her family's empire crumbled. Jim, can you get me documentation on this? Official records. Already ahead of you. I'm emailing you copies of the court filings and IRS notices. This is all public record. As I opened the files on my laptop, a plan began forming in my mind. Tyler thought he was marrying into wealth and status, but he was actually about to become a life raft for a sinking ship. Someone needed to show him the truth about his bride's family before he made the biggest mistake of his life. If you're rooting for Brandon to protect his son from this deception, hit that subscribe button, because this father's fight is just getting started. The next morning, I drove to David's school during his lunch break. As a history teacher, he understood the importance of documentation and evidence. I spread Jim's findings across his desk in the faculty lounge. "Jesus, Dad," David whispered, scanning the court documents. "Rebecca's family is basically broke. Look at this. They owe over $2 million in back taxes, and their insurance company is refusing to cover the environmental cleanup costs." "Tyler has no idea what he's walking into," I said. "This isn't just about a wedding anymore. If he marries her without knowing this, he could be legally liable for her family's deaths, depending on Colorado's marriage laws." David nodded grimly. "And with his new law degree, he'd be the perfect person to help them navigate bankruptcy proceedings. They're not just gaining a son-in-law, they're gaining free legal counsel." We decided on a strategy. David would reach out to Tyler under the guise of planning a bachelor party, while I would approach this more directly. I made copies of all the documentation and prepared a folder marked "Wedding Gift" for Tyler. That evening, I called my old friend Pete, who owned a small investigation firm in Colorado Springs. Pete owed me a favor from when I'd helped rebuild his office after a fire 3 years ago. "Pete, I need surveillance photos of the Broadmoor this weekend. Nothing illegal, just document who's there for the Morrison wedding. I have a feeling this whole intimate ceremony story is bullshit." Friday afternoon, Pete called with interesting news. "Brandon, you were right. I counted at least 200 guests arriving for the rehearsal dinner alone. This isn't an intimate wedding. It's a massive society event. Your son lied to you about the size." My blood boiled, but I stayed focused. "Can you get me a guest list?" "Already on it. One of the catering staff is my cousin's daughter. She sent me the seating chart. Brandon, there are people flying in from New York, Los Angeles, even London. Meanwhile, the bride's family owes money to half the vendors in Aspen." Saturday morning, exactly 24 hours before the wedding, I made my move. I drove to Tyler's apartment with the evidence folder and Pete's photos. This time, I wasn't leaving until we had a real conversation. Tyler answered the door in his pajamas, looking stressed and exhausted. "Dad, I really can't talk right now. The wedding is tomorrow and—" "Son, you need to see this before you make a mistake that could ruin your life." I handed him the folder. "Your fiancé's family is facing financial ruin. They're being investigated for tax fraud, and their debts could become your responsibility once you're married. This whole wedding is a facade." Tyler's face went pale as he flipped through the documents. For the first time in months, I saw my real son, not the person Rebecca had molded him into. Tyler invited me inside, his hands shaking as he continued reading through the evidence. His apartment, which I'd never really noticed before, was decorated entirely in Rebecca style. Expensive, minimalist furniture that looked more like a showroom than a home where someone actually lived. "Dad, I don't understand. Rebecca told me her father was expanding the business. She said they were buying new properties in Vail. Son, they're liquidating assets to pay creditors. Look at this filing from last month. They're trying to sell the Aspen house before it gets seized." Tyler sank into his designer couch, looking lost. "The wedding costs.
Rebecca said her parents insisted on paying for everything because they wanted it to be perfect. But if they're broke, they're probably putting it all on credit, hoping your future earnings will help them dig out of this hole. For the first time in months, Tyler really looked at me, not through me or around me, but directly at me. Dad, what have I done? I've been so caught up in trying to fit into their world that I forgot who I am. I sat down next to him. Tyler, I've watched you transform from the kid who used to help me fix neighbors' fences for free into someone who uninvited his own father from his wedding. That's not the man I raised. He buried his face in his hands. Rebecca kept saying that if I wanted to succeed in law, I needed to distance myself from my blue-collar background. She said it would hurt my career prospects if her family's friends saw me as just a construction worker's son. And you believed that?
I wanted to believe it because I love her, or I thought I did, but lately I feel like I'm playing a role in someone else's life. Tyler stood up and walked to his kitchen where wedding RSVPs were scattered across the counter. He picked up the guest list and shook his head. Look at this, Dad. 250 people, and I only know about 30 of them. Most of my law school friends didn't even make the cut because Rebecca said they weren't established enough. He turned to face me, and I saw tears in his eyes. You know what the worst part is? I wrote that email uninviting you 3 times before I sent it. Each time, I felt sick. But Rebecca convinced me it was necessary for our new beginning. It's not too late to change course, son. Tyler walked over to a framed photo of our family from his law school graduation, the last time we'd all been together and genuinely happy. I used to be proud of where I came from. You taught me that honest work has dignity, that family loyalty matters more than social status. When did I forget that? He picked up his phone and stared at it for a long moment. Dad, if I call off this wedding, I'll lose everything. My job, my apartment, probably most of my friends in Boulder. But you'll keep your integrity, I said, and you'll still have your real family. Tyler nodded slowly, understanding finally dawning in his eyes. I need to make some calls. Tyler spent the next 2 hours making the hardest phone calls of his life. First, he called Michael and David, apologizing for his behavior and asking them to come to Boulder immediately. Then he called Rebecca. I could hear her voice through the phone from across the room, shrill, angry, demanding. Tyler kept saying, "We need to talk about your father's legal situation," and "I found out about the tax investigation." Finally, Rebecca hung up on him. 20 minutes later, she burst through his apartment door without knocking, her face flushed with rage. Behind her was her father, Richard Morrison, a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd stepped out of a country club magazine. "Tyler, what is this nonsense about calling off the wedding?" Rebecca demanded. Then she saw me sitting on the couch and her expression turned venomous. "I should have known. Your father's been poisoning you against me." Richard Morrison stepped forward, trying to project authority. "Mr. Stevens, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you're interfering with my daughter's happiness." I stood up, my construction-hardened frame suddenly feeling every bit of its strength. "Mr. Morrison, I'm interfering with your financial scheme. Tyler, show them what we found." Tyler spread the court documents across his coffee table. Rebecca's face went white as she recognized the letterheads from the IRS and Colorado Department of Revenue. "How did you get these?" Richard stammered. "They're public records," I said, "available to anyone who knows where to look. Tyler deserves to know he's marrying into a family facing criminal charges for tax evasion." Rebecca turned on Tyler desperately. "Baby, this is just a misunderstanding. Daddy's lawyers are handling everything. After we're married, you can help us sort this out. You're a lawyer now. You understand how these things work." "That's exactly what I understand," Tyler said, his voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. "Rebecca, you're not looking for a husband. You're looking for free legal representation and someone to help your family avoid bankruptcy." Richard's mask finally slipped. "You ungrateful little nobody! Do you have any idea what my family has done for you? The connections we've provided? The opportunities? Opportunities to become your financial scapegoat," Tyler shot back. Rebecca started crying. Not genuine tears, but the calculated kind I'd seen her use before when she wanted something. "Tyler, you're destroying our future over some paperwork. I love you." "If you loved me," Tyler said quietly, "you wouldn't have made me choose between you and my family. You wouldn't have been ashamed of where I came from." Michael and David arrived just as things were reaching a boiling point. They took one look at the scene and immediately flanked their younger brother. "Rebecca, I think it's time for you to leave," David said firmly. Richard Morrison pointed a manufactured finger at me. "You blue-collar bastards stick together, don't you? You can't stand seeing one of your own rise above his station." That's when Tyler finally found his voice completely. "Mr. Morrison, my father built his station with his own hands. He raised 3 successful sons as a single parent while working 2 jobs. If that's not rising above circumstances, I don't know what is. And I'm proud to be his son." Rebecca and her father left Tyler's apartment in a fury, but not before Rebecca threw her engagement ring at Tyler's feet and screamed that he'd never amount to anything without her family's connections. The silence that followed their departure was deafening. Tyler picked up the ring, a gaudy, oversized diamond that had probably cost more than most people's cars, and set it on the kitchen counter. "You know what, Dad? I never even liked this ring. It was everything she wanted and nothing I would have chosen." Within hours, word of the canceled wedding spread through Boulder's legal community like wildfire. Tyler's phone buzzed constantly with calls from confused wedding guests and curious colleagues. Some were supportive, others seemed more interested in the gossip than his well-being. Monday morning brought unexpected consequences. Tyler arrived at his law firm to find his boss, Harold Whitman, waiting in his office. Whitman was a partner at the prestigious firm and had been Rebecca's father's personal attorney for years. "Stevens, we need to talk," Whitman said curtly. "Your decision to embarrass the Morrison family has put this firm in a very awkward position. Richard Morrison is threatening to take his business elsewhere." Tyler straightened his shoulders. "Mr. Whitman, if you're asking me to choose between my integrity and my job, then I guess I choose my integrity." "Then clear out your desk. You're fired." That afternoon, Tyler called me from his apartment, his voice surprisingly calm. "Dad, I lost my job. Turns out half the partners at the firm were connected to Rebecca's family somehow. I'm basically blacklisted from every major law firm in Boulder. I'm sorry, son. I never wanted this to cost you your career." "Don't be sorry," Tyler said. "You saved me from something much worse. I'd rather rebuild my career with my dignity intact than spend my life as someone else's financial puppet." 3 days later, something wonderful happened. David called with news that changed everything. "Tyler, remember Professor Martinez from your constitutional law class? He heard about what happened and wants to talk to you. His brother runs a legal aid clinic in Denver that helps working-class families with employment disputes and civil rights cases." Within a week, Tyler had a new job, one that paid half what the Boulder firm offered, but gave him the chance to help people who reminded him of his own family. His first case was representing a construction worker who'd been injured on the job and denied compensation by his employer's insurance company. "Dad," Tyler told me over dinner at Sam's Diner, our first meal together in months, "I'm happier than I've been in years. I'm actually practicing law to help people, not to impress rich clients." The Morrison family's legal troubles continued to unfold exactly as Jim had predicted. Richard Morrison was indicted on federal tax evasion charges 2 months later. Rebecca married a pharmaceutical heir from Denver 6 months after that. Apparently, she bounced back quickly from her devastating heartbreak. Tyler never looked back. 2 years later, I'm sitting in the front row of a small chapel in Golden, Colorado, watching my youngest son marry Sarah Chen, a public defender he met while working on a case involving immigrant workers' rights. The contrast between this wedding and the Broadmoor spectacle that never happened couldn't be more striking.
Sarah's family owns a small restaurant in Denver's Highlands neighborhood, and her parents remind me so much of myself, hard-working people who value substance over flash. The wedding has 40 guests, all people who genuinely love Tyler and Sarah. The flowers are simple, the music is a friend playing guitar, and the whole ceremony costs less than Rebecca's engagement ring. Tyler asked me to walk Sarah down the aisle alongside her father, a gesture that meant more to me than any expensive gift ever could. As we made our way down that short aisle, I looked at my son waiting at the altar in his simple black suit, and I saw the man I'd raised, not the person he'd tried to become for Rebecca. Michael's son Jake is the ring bearer, and David serves as Tyler's best man. We're all here, all together celebrating something real and meaningful. Tyler's speech during the reception is about the importance of staying true to your values and never being ashamed of where you come from. Tyler's legal aid practice has grown into a small firm that specializes in workers' rights cases. He's won some significant settlements for construction workers, restaurant employees, and other blue-collar families who needed someone to fight for them. Last month, he was featured in Denver's Westward newspaper as one of the city's rising legal advocates for working families.
Sarah is pregnant with their first child, my first grandchild from Tyler. They're naming the baby James, after my brother Jim, whose investigation saved Tyler from making the biggest mistake of his life. They bought a modest house in Wheat Ridge, close enough for Sunday dinners, but far enough from Boulder that Tyler doesn't have to think about his old life. The Morrison family saga ended exactly as predicted. Richard Morrison was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.8 million in restitution. Their Aspen properties were seized and sold at auction. Rebecca's new marriage lasted exactly 8 months before she filed for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences, though I suspect it had more to do with her new husband discovering her family's financial situation. Every Sunday, Tyler, Sarah, Michael, David, and I still gather at my house in Arvada for dinner and Broncos games. Tyler helps me with home improvement projects, and I'm teaching Sarah how to use power tools. She's surprisingly good at carpentry. We laugh about the Morrison years now, though Tyler still shudders when he remembers how close he came to losing everything that truly mattered. As I write this story, Tyler and Sarah's baby boy is sleeping in his crib upstairs while they finish law school coursework at my kitchen table, the same table where I helped Tyler with his homework 20 years ago. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. People often ask me if I regret investigating Rebecca's family or if I feel bad about ruining Tyler's first engagement. The answer is simple. A father's job isn't to make his children's lives easy. It's to help them make good decisions and catch them when they fall. Tyler was falling toward a life that would have destroyed him, and I'm grateful I was there to break that fall. The truth is, Tyler saved himself. I just gave him the information he needed to see clearly. When he chose integrity over image, family over status, and authentic love over financial security, he became the man I'd always hoped he'd be. He remembered that there's no shame in honest work, no embarrassment in genuine love, and no substitute for loyalty to the people who stood by you when you had nothing. Today, Tyler makes a fraction of what he would have earned at that Boulder law firm, but he goes to bed every night knowing he helped someone who really needed it. He drives a used Honda instead of a BMW, lives in a starter home instead of a mansion, and shops at Target instead of designer boutiques, and he's never been happier. Sarah often tells me that she's grateful Rebecca rejected Tyler because it led him back to his values and ultimately to her. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. My grandsons, Jake, who's now 12, and baby James, will grow up knowing they come from a family that values character over cash, loyalty over luxury, and truth over appearances. That's a legacy I'm proud to leave them.
Thank you for staying with Brandon's story until the very end. It means the world to me that you took this journey with our family. If you loved this story of family loyalty triumphing over greed and manipulation, please hit that like button, drop a comment sharing your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible tales of justice and redemption. What kind of story would you like to see next? More family drama, workplace revenge, relationship betrayals, or stories about exposing corruption? Your suggestions help shape our next video, so let us know in the comments below. And if this story inspired you or reminded you of the importance of staying true to your values, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that doing the right thing is worth more than any amount of money or status.